It's the intel about the next generation of Bulldogs. This is Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger.
Let's go, I'm a Bulldog.
Hello, Dog Nation, and welcome into Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Dog Nation recruiting insider Jeff Sentell. At this point last week, we knew there was potentially two conversations that we were going to be having today, and I'm ecstatic to say that we're having a good one.
It's like Kaylee was, you want to talk about stoked? I think the only lady that I've been around over the last couple of days that was maybe happier than Kaylee to put Jared Curtis on the commitment board was maybe Jared Curtis's mother, Barbara, as she was stoked to see him become a dog. And you know, I want to say one thing, Kaylee. Let me give you some flowers here on this one. So picture this: the news team is there. News team is there on scene. We spy the Curtis family, basically in full-length black tracksuits, jackets. Kaylee, through years of training, I would imagine, she starts sleuthing and she looks down to Barbara Curtis's shoes. Now, Barbara did an excellent job of hiding said shoes. It got past me, got past most everyone else, but Kaylee saw a little white shoe with a little stripe of red around the top, and she was like, file that one away.
So here's the thing, though, is we get to Nashville pretty early, and we're looking for what we call signs or omens or things that would suggest that, okay, maybe this is in the cards. And signs and omens are great, but seeing the real thing is better. And after the Justice Terry commitment, I don't really believe in colors, but after seeing the red on her shoes in that moment, I was like, okay, I don't need signs, I don't need omens. I just needed Mama's shoes to tell me where he was going. And in that moment, I knew that we were about to have good news on our hands, that's what we were there for.
I mean, I would say Barbara Curtis can go outfit for outfit with a lot of Georgia ladies out there. She's always had the earrings. She had a sparkly, shimmering Georgia shirt on for the commitment announcement. And, man, ever since he first committed to Georgia, she just put all her cards on the table, and she's been rocking G's left and right.
And we're going to get a chance to hear from her later. So because this is such a big commitment, and it doesn't just mean getting one player, but it potentially affects the rest of the 2026 class, our show today is going to be based on all angles of the Jared Curtis story. We're going to do the 5 things that you need to know about Jared Curtis, as well as the commitment itself. Then we're going to get a chance to hear from Barbara Curtis, his mom, as well as his coach at Nashville Christian, Jeff Brothers. And then what impact does Jared Curtis have on the rest of 2026? Is this just the first of many? And who are going to be those targets that he goes after as now the quarterback of this class? But first, we'll start with the 5 things that you need to know about Jared Curtis, and we'll do it quick 5 style. So here's the thing about the Jared Curtis commitment is that when Georgia pulls in a guy that is that elite of a prospect, not only does it get Dog Nation talking, but it gets the rest of college football talking, because this is a commitment that impacts a lot of other schools, and you start to try to gauge, well, how big is this in comparison to what Georgia has been able to get in the past? You hear, well, Bobo took Matt Stafford and made him a #1 pick, and potentially he can do that for Jared Curtis too. So it's kind of a loaded question, but I mean, just how big is his role now with the Dogs?
Yeah, so it's one of those things where people want to know the 10,000-foot sales view, the perspective on it. You know, I've been 10 years now covering Georgia recruiting for Dog Nation, and for me, I go back, okay, this is the highest rated 5-star quarterback since Justin Fields in 2019. It was higher than Brock Vandagriff. It's also the first 5-star since Brock Vandagriff in 2021. But this also, Kaylee, gives Georgia the chance to sign the nation's #1 quarterback prospect, period, since Matthew Stafford, way back when everybody didn't even know what Soulja Boy was at the time when Matthew Stafford committed to Georgia. But to put this into perspective, my quick skinny on this, Kaylee, is I feel it is at least the biggest commitment for Georgia since they signed the #1 overall prospect back in 2019, and that was future DGD Nolan Smith, because there was some back and forth a little bit with Nolan while he was committed. He did an April Fool's Day joke. Alabama was in there a little bit, but he remained solidly a dog, and I think this is kind of the biggest news for Georgia basically since that 2018-2019 cycle And the only other, because you got to look at it, Nolan Smith, #1 overall prospect in the country. Kaylee, here's some foreshadowing. Georgia is also after right now the #1 overall prospect in the country in Jackson Cantwell. Big news with him coming next week. He'll make his decision next Tuesday. Obviously, that's something we'll keep our eye on.
One thing that we can say about this recruitment is that it was anything but ordinary. And in a very ironic way, we could also say that the commitment ceremony was unordinary, but maybe not in the way that we suspected.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll go ahead and show you this on the screen here. Watch how quickly this happened.
Thank you all for coming out today. It means a lot. I would like to thank my family, teammates, coaches and trainers, and the NCS family in general for all the support y'all have given me. Thank you to Coach Lane and Coach Smart for investing in me and pouring so much out to me during this process. With that being said, I'm grateful to announce that I'm committed to the University of Georgia.
21 seconds, it's all it took. I mean, this process, we feel like that we've been talking about this forever, just for 21 seconds, which was great, by the way. But
Yeah.
as I'm filming this, I'm listening and I'm watching it at the same time. And I don't know if you could hear in the background of the video, but I'm like, oh. And you know, even when my mom will text me and goes, wait, that was it? That it was quick. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No, Kaylee. I mean, maybe there was one last year where a recruit that did not end up with Georgia, he basically came into the ceremony all dressed out in Georgia gear, and they had this triumphant thing with smoke, and they were just, you know, really out front with it. But that wasn't a 5-star. This is a 5-star. Kaylee, I've never seen one that happened that quick. And, you know, for a lot of folks, they, you know, sometimes people are used to these, Kaylee. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to find 30 minutes to get away from work or to have a little break to watch this commitment ceremony. And they're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do with the rest of my day or the rest of my time? And interesting with Jared, I wrote about this on DogNation.com today, that obviously it's the fastest. Cody Chafin's with a really quick clock on him. I had it at 23 seconds, give or take. But if he operates Georgia's offense as quickly as he runs the show on the commitment, I mean, that was a 1-minute offense, NASCAR pace, if you've ever seen it.
So let's get to the one question that I think everybody wants to know, and I did see stuff in the comments about this. Because he was committed at one point, decommitted, and now commits again, some people don't necessarily know, like, okay, is it going to end the way that they hope? And I understand the concerns because it's fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But I also view this in the way that, like, they say that if you're trying to quit something or accomplish a goal, you're supposed to tell everyone you know, because then that way you hold yourself accountable.
Wow.
And now that he's made this commitment twice, it's like, okay, well, now you're going after all these recruits. You've got this fan base that adores you. And if you go back against your word, then that's like shame and embarrassment on yourself. So at least on my end, I truly believe that this is it.
So there's a few things there. Number one, Kaylee, these are 17, 18-year-old kids. Jared will not be 19 until December. I've learned to never say never, because I saw Dylan Raiola transfer from Arizona to Buford to Georgia for his senior year, expecting to have his family located around Athens for the next 3 or 4 years of his career. And then Carson Beck comes back. Nebraska is still very intriguing, and he ends up going to Nebraska. So, like, I used to think real estate transactions were pretty secure. That having been said, I feel like Oregon is moving on. They're trying to now go get a quarterback, another 5-star quarterback. Jared just feels like he's done. He told me that he's done. There was some real recruiting fatigue. Everybody on the scene, from agents to head coach to, most importantly, mama, they all believe that Jared is done. Because the main thing is this, is location was huge, as you'll see in some of our coverage and some of our segments today. Like Athens, Georgia to Nashville, it's a lot closer. It's like 3.5 hours, 4 hours. 1,900 miles away is Oregon. But he's already had his reset button where he backed off of it, Kaylee, and then saw what else there was to see. And it was kind of funny that all roads still led back to Georgia.
I think it's perfectly understandable for Georgia fans to still be scarred because of the Dylan Raiola situation, but I don't put Curtis in the same category as Dylan Raiola, because when we go back and look at his high school career, he was at a different school all 4 years of his high school career, and maybe that would foreshadow some of the quickness to want to jump to the next best thing. So I don't necessarily put Curtis in the same category as Raiola, but I do understand why people have this concern because of the second-time commitment and because of what Georgia has had to face in the past with 18-year-old quarterbacks. So at least for me, I think it's done. Now, I'll let you tell this next story because I know that this was one of your favorite parts. We got the chance to do a breakout interview with with Jared Curtis and how he told his family. I'll let Jeff tell the story.
Yeah, first of all, I'm going to give you kudos on that last point because I think I'm buying what you're selling because Dylan did float around. Jared, very solid dude. He's a guy that Nashville Christian folks say that he does a really good job of making everyone feel connected, and he keeps his focus on Nashville Christian. A lot of people don't know, Kaylee, that he drives like an hour each way to school. He actually lives in Dixon, Tennessee, which is about 45 miles away from Nashville Christian in Nashville. So there's already like a commitment there. I know for a fact that other schools have tried to get him to transfer. He never did. So the young man likes to put roots down, but the young man is also, when it comes to letting his family know, it's a very modern story. Like I have teenagers, my wife and I, we have family threads, family text threads, and he basically said the night before the decision on Cinco de Curtis Eve, let's say, he said, wear Georgia things tomorrow. That was it. That's how he lets his family know. And this sly dog, he had his dad, Jesse, ready with the phone to secretly record Barbara while she got that news. And there was some crying. There was some hemming and hawing and happiness and so overjoyed. But they got that thing captured on video, and I don't think nobody's going to be able to get that video of Jared's mom just letting it all loose finally, that her son was finally a dog again.
I'm with you. At first, when he spoke about it, I was like, that's kind of a little bit strange to me. This is huge news. This is your dream coming true. This is where your future is. But then the more I got to thinking about it, I think it speaks to your point of how modern it is.
Yeah.
When something big happens in my life, I'm just putting everybody in the family group chat and saying, hey, da-da-da. So at the time, I was like, okay, that's a little bit odd, but you're right. It's such a modern, I guess, I don't know if he's Generation Z or maybe the one after, but it really is a modern story of how you would tell your family.
Something else we learned, because there are a lot of internet detectives that said they knew he was going to Georgia when they saw the prom, and they saw the red car, and the red sports car. And, you know, being the hard-charging, boots-on-the-ground reporters that we are, we found the story on that. And it turns out, like a lot of things, the prom date, the girlfriend chose the color, and he was duty-bound to then wear red and black. And I know he went through his mind. He's like, what in the world's everybody going to think? So he wasn't giving it away. It was actually girlfriend's choice on the prom colors, prom outfit.
So last thing on our quick five here. The recruitment process is done, but now a new chapter begins, and it's a completely different kind of work because he is the quarterback in this class. Like, he immediately becomes the ringleader. He's the one that has to text recruits and find those guys to back him up. So now he's going to be visiting Athens this weekend to try to get a head start on that.
It was pretty funny because I asked him, I said, what are you doing? Because, like, one of the things you do when you're on these scenes and on these commitment ceremonies you do is you're like, okay, dude, what's next? Like, when are you getting back to Athens? And he's literally like, Kaylee was there. I was like, well, we're breaking news right in the middle of the interview. He's like, Jackson Cantwell's coming to Athens May 10th, decides on May 13th. I'm going to be there. I'm going to talk to him. And it's kind of funny how that all kind of came together, where you've got Jared, and this is what's funny. I love people on the internet sometimes. Like, we don't have golden shoes that we could give out. Maybe we could do a golden hedge one time. But somebody, I don't know who, because I got so many messages, somebody sent me, and I guess they wanted to be an ad wizard in their previous life or future life. They said, Bobo and Kirby want another ring, so they're going to Jared. Obviously, it's a little bit corny.
Plugs.
Might be so corny Del Monte wouldn't can it, but I like that. And really what he's doing now, and this is a term I started using years ago when I started covering Georgia recruiting, is it's time for Jared Curtis to be the Pied Piper, play that tune, and probably it's No More Play in GA by Pastor Troy about it is time for everybody else, the best recruits in the country, to come join him at Georgia.
All right, right, so in just a moment, we are finally going to hear from Barbara Curtis herself. But of course, here on Before the Hedges, we are brought to you by Kroger. And of course, Kroger was a really big part of our commitment ceremony the other day and will be next week, which one we're going to announce here in just a little bit. But Jeff and I got back from Nashville last night, and sometimes when you're on the road for a while, you don't really feel like doing much. So I've been waiting to tell you, I actually got my groceries delivered last night from Kroger using Kroger Boost. If you're not a Kroger Boost member, now's the time to try. You can try Boost for free for 30 days. Save up to $1,000 per year with 2 times the fuel points plus what I used last night, that free grocery delivery. So you can sign up at Kroger.com/boost. Again, that's Kroger.com/boost. If you've been following the Jared Curtis journey at all over the last year, it was no secret that a really big factor in all of it was his mom. Geographical location was important to her. It's her youngest son. Of course, you want to keep him close to you, with them being in Nashville and then Georgia being in Athens. I think we all kind of knew at least where mom wanted him to go, but it wasn't like she was pushing him to do one certain thing, but we all kind of knew. So Jeff had the chance to talk to Barbara Curtis after the commitment, so we want to let you guys hear what she says. This is the Before the Hedges Dog Nation conversation with Jared's mom, Barbara.
Barbara Curtis, obviously the very happy lady today. Just what's going through your mind right now?
Like, we are so excited, and this has truly been a blessing, this journey. Like, Coach Lanning, let me just start there with Coach Lanning and Coach Stein with Oregon. They have been amazing, and we appreciate all that they've done throughout this process in recruiting Jared. But of course, you know, we love Coach Smart, and we love Coach Bobo. We love Coach Gummy, although he's not there any longer. We love Coach Streeter. We love Coop. We love Angela. We love Logan. The list goes on and on and on. So we love Georgia, and we are just, I am stoked. And I'm just so happy that Jared followed his heart and made a decision that's best for him, you know, so. But, you know, it goes back to, like, 3 years of relationships, you know, like with Coach Bobo, like Coach Munkin was there. That's who gave Jared his first offer. And Jared's been going to Georgia for many years now. So, like, relationships, like, I know this is an NIL world that we live in, but relationships really do matter, you know. So, like, those you can't put a ticket price on, you know.
Before the news in the family group chat, did you have a mother's intuition tug about where this thing was going?
I was stressed out at different points of this journey, thinking that it potentially could not be Georgia.
Yeah.
And so, like, when we went back to Athens for a spring break visit, when we left there is when really I just felt at peace about it, because I just watched how Jared interacted. Like, it was seriously like home away from home. He knew his way around. The relationships that he has built there, like, he was just, you could just see the pure happiness on his face.
And was that different than what you saw at Oregon?
I think that the difference was, like, Jared was happy while he was at Oregon. I don't want to discredit that by no means, and they did a great job while we were there. It's just, he's only been there twice, you know, so it's different when you've only been somewhere twice and you've been to Georgia.
Did you ever go there for a game?
He went there. He did go there for a game. Jesse and he went to a game once, and then he and I went once prior to his verbal commitment to Georgia.
What did your phone look like after the news broke? Like, I saw Mike Bobo on one of your FaceTimes or something like that. Can you explain what that's like with a happy staff and a happy mom? Like, what are those memories going to be like?
It's obviously, it's emotional. Like, you know, I cried last night. When Jared decommitted from Georgia, I cried for 3 days. When he got his offer, I cried for 2 days. And so, like, it's just a continuous, like, blessing and light that I feel like God has just continued to shine on him and his path, you know, to get to Georgia. So it's like, I don't know, it's just a great thing. Yeah, I'm just excited.
You can tell it's very special and emotional for you. Like, what was Bobo like on those calls? Was he just happy? Was he laughing? Like, what does a happy offensive coordinator look when he's got a 5-star quarterback?
Yeah, so of course he's laughing, he's excited, like we're just pumped, can't wait to get there. So yeah.
This is a question I'm going to get for a million times until December. Do you feel like this is done? Do you feel like this is done?
This is done.
Yeah?
Yes.
What makes you say that? Did you guys have a team huddle and said this and this is it? Or like what?
He really truly just didn't feel right, like going to other schools. He just wanted to watch football games, you know, like he just wanted to go and watch teams compete, and he just didn't feel right doing that committed to Georgia. Like he didn't want the negative spotlight and attention, be like, oh, well, he's still going to other schools, you know. Although he would call Coach Smart and Coach Bobo every time before he would go and let them know, he still just didn't feel right about it, you know. So I think, like, with him doing that, like, again, he's explored all these options once more, you know, and enjoyed this journey and this process, and I think that we are finally, like, it's done. The chapter is closed.
Georgia came out of 2 cycles as the winner, right?
Right.
So it's like best 2 out of 3, right, or something like that.
Best 2 out of 2.
Best 2 out of 2. Yeah, it was already that. I want to make sure your thoughts are heard on this. Everybody focuses on NIL and finances and everything else. I've heard him say, I've heard you say, and kind of double down on relationships. Like, do you feel, like, obviously wherever he went, he was going to get a lot of money, but do you feel like got overlooked a little bit through all this about the relationships and not everybody saying the school with strokes the biggest check's going to win here?
I 100% agree with that. I do. I feel like that's why I want to emphasize, like, 3 years of relationship, you cannot put a price tag on that. Like Coach Bobo and Coach Gummy, you know, like, they are amazing. Coach Smart is too. Like, when you talk to somebody multiple times a day, you know, like, it's hard to, like, just, it's like a breakup, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just hard to just do away with that relationship, you know. And so we've done that for 3 years with him. So, like, even whenever he was decommitted, nothing changed.
Wow.
So, like, yeah, relationships do matter.
So here's the thing. I'm not a mom, but in certain situations like this, I try to put myself in the shoes of my mom, or like what my parents would have thought about this. And I imagine it's kind of like when your child goes to stay the night away from your house for the first time. Like, you want to make sure that the people that you're dropping them off with are good parents, and that you know them to a certain extent, so that you as a parent could feel more comfortable. So when she's talking about the relationships they built with Bobo and Kirby, like, of course that's going to make her feel better as a mom, like, giving him to people that she's familiar with and know are good people and are there for his best interest and, like, want him to be the best version of himself. So I really empathize with a lot of the things that she said in this.
That was that one quote where she shouted out, Kirby, former coach, former analyst, Montgomery Van Gorder, Coach Bobo, Coop, Logan Reed, Angela Kirkpatrick, Coach Streeter, the offensive analyst. I mean, I was waiting for her. If I'd let her keep going, she probably would have mentioned the UGA 10, Boom, the guy that puts the air in the footballs at practice. Like, she was really rolling, Kaylee.
Yeah. But apart from that, like, I guess there's been so much hatred towards Mike Bobo this past year, and now he's got the quarterback, the big 5-star #1 quarterback. And I saw a lot of people that were eating their words earlier this week, because now he's got his guy, and it may take some time for Jared to get in that role, but now we can also kind of see what Bobo can do with a quarterback that's got the level of skill set that Curtis has.
It's funny. I guess we'll do some more Before the Hedges improv, because we did our make-believe earlier with Kaylee sleuthing out the shoes. But so we're posted up. We had our one-on-one with Jared Curtis afterward. We jump right into the interview, and Barbara comes up, and she's got Mike Bobo on the phone. She's got Mike Bobo, like, FaceTime and the whole thing. I tell you what, Coach Bobo, if I could have grabbed a meme of that guy after every touchdown that Gunner throws, and after every touchdown that Puglisi will throw, and Jared Curtis will throw, and Ryan Montgomery will throw, that was a happy man. And not only that, in his post-game press scrum before the, one-on-one breakouts or whatever, I counted up, Kaylee. He name-dropped Coach Bobo 6 times in his, I don't know, probably 8-9 minute conversation with the assembled media there, right there. But I'm going to tell you, Coach Bobo looked super happy to be watching Jared Curtis talking about how great it is to be a dog.
So through Barbara, I feel like we got to hear a lot about the journey and a lot about her perspective. And in just a moment, we're going to have a Dog Nation conversation with his coach at Nashville Christian, Jeff Brothers, and that'll talk more about what he offers as a leader and his physical skill set. But we have some very important news. We're going to keep the good vibes and the good momentum rolling. And next week, Jeff and I will be headed to Nixa, Missouri to do the commitment ceremony for 5-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell, who will come up again later in our show. It's going to be at 3:45 Eastern time on Tuesday. We'll probably start the broadcast around 3:20, 3:30. That's certainly one that you're not going to miss because a lot of sites have him ranked as the number one overall player. It's down to Georgia, Oregon, and Miami.
And also Ohio State.
And also Ohio State.
There you go.
I think that Jared Curtis was just the first of many, so we're going to take our chances, head up there, so make sure to tune into whatever Dog Nation platform you watch on. And if you want a reminder, just go ahead and subscribe to our Dog Nation YouTube page. That way you'll get notified the second we start going live for the Jackson Cantwell commitment ceremony.
That's awesome, Kaylee. Good tease there, good promo. Shout out to all of the folks that run Dog Nation, the shot callers, our team leaders, BJ Sweeney, lots of folks, because when we say, I think we should be there, this is big news.
Huge.
When duty calls, we will be there because we feel like we owe it to you guys to report the very biggest UGA recruiting stories each and every day. And the one question I have for you, Kaylee, is Kaylee always, like, I'm like the grizzled veteran, and I don't notice the little things. Kaylee, like, notices some bottled Nashville Christian water that they had at the ceremony, and she got me kind of tickled a little bit. She said, "I'm gonna call that holy water from now on."
Yeah,
so, like,
it's got the logo on it and everything.
Yeah, I wonder if, like, we put that Nashville Christian bottled water on a future Dog Nation set, or maybe it makes the pilgrimage up to Nixa. I don't know.
I was gonna say maybe we just like sprinkle a little bit on like where the ceremony is, or maybe we sprinkle a little bit on Jackson Cantwell without him noticing, so the holy water reaches everybody.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
All right, so we just had the chance to hear from Barbara Curtis, but now let's hear more about the physical skill set and the kind of leader that he is. Here's our Dog Nation conversation with Jared Curtis's coach, Jeff Brothers.
How happy do you think those coaches in Athens should be about getting to call plays with him in a couple of years?
Well, what a tremendous kid he is, and the people that are around him, he's just got a gravitational pull. He just loves playing the game. He loves being out there. He loves practice. He loves the workouts. He loves just competing. He's not at all drawn to the glamour of it all, and the outside things don't really move the needle for him. It's just about being with his buddies, playing ball, competing, whatever the case may be. And in the case of football, he's just a natural, but he works really, really hard, and he's really, really humble about it, but he's very confident that he can get the job done, and it's fun calling plays when you know there's a guy out there leading your team like that.
Do you have a favorite moment so far coaching him? Is it a state title game? Is it a August practice? Like, what's the moment that sticks out for you coaching Jared so far?
Oh gosh, I don't know that there's one moment that would rise above any others. It's just so fun to watch him. Like I said, just the kind of person that he is, you know, that he really just truly practices with a smile on his face, but he's serious about it. And it's just the kind of kid you want to have be in the front of your program. You know, when your most talented player is your hardest worker, then you know you're going to be in a good situation. And the guys just follow him as he leads them in that. And the funnest moments are probably, honestly, when he's just sitting in the office and we're just talking about things that don't have anything to do with football, and I see a smile on his face and just the joy that he has about himself. It's good to see that kids still have that.
Jeff, how would you describe, I'm sure you've seen it 50 times now, when football men, guys that see big arms and college arms all the time in high school, what's the typical reaction when somebody sees Jared throw for the first time?
Their eyes get a little bigger, and their mouth opens a little bit, just the jaw drop moment to think that just didn't look like it was any work at all. It's just very natural. And the fact, and I was telling you earlier, I think too, that he just throws a very catchable ball. So you see big arms, you see guys that can throw it through a keyhole at 50 yards, you see guys that really just put a tight spin on the ball, but they don't always turn into the guys who can also throw the check down route, who can also throw the swing, who can also throw the deep out and the drive route over the middle, and just he throws a catchable ball at every level. So what it really is when you see what he can do and then how he does everything so effortlessly. But it's kind of like Michelangelo. If it looks like everything was easy, you didn't see how hard he worked to make it happen. And that's the way Jared is.
Coach, I think the last thing you've described to me, how all this swirling around him, he can still make Nashville Christian the importance.
Yeah.
I wonder, it's an underrated stat these days about how part of the job at quarterback is you got to get the other 10 men in the huddle
right.
to believe for you, to care about you,
right.
and to lift you up,
yep.
or to let you go make a play. How does Jared do that so well here?
Well, I think, again, it's just natural for him. That's just the kind of person that he is. I've told people, too, that he has no new friends since this whole process started, and he didn't leave off any friends that he had when it started. So it's all still the same group of guys doing the same stuff. I can close my eyes and see them playing out here on the playground, just like I can watch them play on Friday night, coming up this fall. And I think that just genuine authenticity about him as a person. He loves his friends, he loves his football team, he loves his coaches and his family, and he's a relationship-driven guy. That's what he was saying in the press conference, that one of the things about Georgia that stood out the most for him, maybe the deciding factor, was the relationships. And so he develops that not only with the coaches and the staff, but also with his teammates, and I think there's no doubt that's what will propel him as he moves forward.
Coach, is it super hard to say that's the best throw he's ever made? Do you ever look at all his tape and say, that's the one that I think's his best throw? How hard is that?
Most of the time I say that's the next best throw I've ever seen him make, because there's another one coming. The one, it's not even on tape. I watched him one time. We were at practice, and he was looking out to the side. We had a spread formation. He's looking out to the guys, and the center snapped the ball when he wasn't looking, so it kind of went past him, and he just kind of jogged back to it. And we were running an outs concept, so the outside receiver across the field has a deep out route, a 14-yard comeback route. And Jared kind of jogs over to the ball, picks it up, and on one leg just kind of turns around and underarms it across the field on an out route and hits the guy right in the chest. And that was one of the most amazing things I've seen him do. And then he just kind of jogs back to the huddle and, what's next?
Was that a 30-yard throw? What was it?
Oh, yeah.
40-yard throw, underhanded and everything else.
Yeah,
like
it's a submarine pitcher from baseball, just picks it up on one foot, just shoots it out there and hits him right in stride.
Guys, that's Jeff Brothers here at Nashville Christian State Championship Coach. Thanks for being with Dog Nation.
Appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
All right, so talk to me about that throw. When you heard that, what was going through your head?
Yeah, because he's already told me several throws. All the Gene Garber fans out there, you know who you are. Maybe Dan Quisenberry, Kent Colvey. Now I'm really getting into my MLB 90s, 80s bag right there. But it's a 30, 40-yard throw, he said, on the money, hits the guy in the chest, off balance, underarm, underhand throw. So that just shows the legit arm strength. Jared told me he threw it 68 yards one time his freshman year. And the arm talent's all there. I really liked what Brothers had to say there, to just kind of zoom in on a couple points of that. Anybody watch Draft Day? The thing is with Jared Curtis, he won't be a Bo Callahan. People will come to his birthday party. If you've seen that movie, you know what I'm talking about. Hashtag if you know, you know. The other one I really like, and this is a story he told me last year when I went up there after he committed to Georgia the first time, commitment number one. That's funny saying this, but his favorite play was when Jared threw a check down. It was a swing pass to the running back, but I guess I'll go Hollywood here, Kaylee. You remember that scene in the end of Remember the Titans where Sunshine is like the road grader, the escort? Well, what Jared did is he threw the swing pass check down, and he really, really wanted his teammate to score. So he basically just got on his horse, giddy up, and ran and was the convoy the whole way with his running back. He actually outran his running back some 50, 60 yards, caught up with him, and he was like his lead blocker for that. And that's one of the things that really stuck with Coach Brothers as well. Another thing, Kaylee, that feels a little bit different. Press conference after the 5-star, somebody asked Jared a question about his Nashville Christian team. And he said something about the backup quarterback at Nashville Christian, who has a huge arm, maybe not as mobile as Jared, but he said, I hope he's in my shoes one day. I hope he's here doing the same thing one day. And I think, when we're trying to tell the whole story here about Jared Curtis, I think that's pretty cool that, yeah, he's getting NIL. He's got the Hollister deal probably on the way with that OG 1983 shirt that I think Brandon Adams would like to cop, whatever. But you learned all those other things. You like him being Sunshine and Rev in that final scene of Remember the Titans, or the underhanded throw, or how the teammates really, you could see his teammates really genuinely appreciated him and realized that just wasn't the big timer. So Dog fans, you want to know about culture, you want to know about how he fits in, what kind of leader he'll be. Those are some examples.
And just know that I'm not going to say the brand because we don't give free plugs, but that T-shirt may come up in tomorrow's episode of Dog Nation at Large at 7 o'clock. So for more on that, definitely check that out tomorrow. So from what we've heard from Coach, what we've heard from his mom, what we've heard from him himself, he's got the physical skill set and the mental skill set to be a successful quarterback. But he has to take on a whole different role now. It's not about how many touchdown passes he can throw. It's about who he can get in this class to build around him, because this is truly a commitment that is much bigger than just one individual. It's going to start a domino effect of other things that will affect all of college football. So this is Jared's Dominoes.
We rise from the rubble, see the dominoes fall. Knock them down before we know I'll be the last one standing.
That's great.
All right, so let's just go ahead and start with the first one because it's the most immediate one we're going to find out soon. That's 5-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell, who was very active on social media after the Jared Curtis announcement to Georgia. Here's the thing, though. One of the things that you taught me really early on in this experience is to follow the visits, but Jackson Cantwell hasn't taken a visit to Georgia since the Auburn game last year. So why is this any different?
Kaylee, I'm going to try to be very relatable here. Maybe so relatable that the KDs back at Kennesaw State will appreciate this. I'm going to attempt to stick this landing. Normally it's follow the visits. And if a recruit's not visiting a school, then he's not interested in a school. With Jackson Cantwell, he flipped the script. I talked to him about this just last night, and he said, basically what he said, I'm going to kind of parallel it to something else. Georgia was already in the final round of The Bachelor, if that makes any sense. You know what I mean?
You're girl mathing me right here.
Yeah,
I get it.
So it was like he knew Georgia. He knew Georgia was going to be there. He knew Georgia was bona fide. And he didn't need to keep seeing Georgia because he just needed to advance Georgia to the very end, to the end game. And that's where he is at right now. Like, we had a long, detailed conversation with Jackson. It'll be a story on dognation.com, probably by the time you watch this right now, but down to 4 schools. Very interesting, Kaylee. Drew Rosenhaus is his agent. That Drew Rosenhaus, NFL legendary. Maybe somebody could say he's been going for the jugular. Here's what we've learned. We've learned that all 4 of those schools, Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Miami, are roughly offering Jackson the same amount of money. Pretty much marginalized there. So the money factor, while it will be extreme, is going to be level across the playing field. That's very interesting. He's going to see Georgia. It is an unofficial visit to Georgia this weekend. If he does choose Georgia, eventually, if he does choose Georgia, he will have an official visit in his back pocket as well. The same for Miami. I believe the same for Ohio State. He did just take his official visit to Oregon. Very interesting stuff there. He really likes Georgia. He told me that he's felt like a priority from Georgia, like the #1 guy on the board type of priority since July of 2023 for his class. Here's 2 more. I want you to make sure you listen to this one. Might be a first. Jackson Cantwell, I don't know if you know this, he was in the chat for our Dog Nation commitment special for Jared Curtis. He was, maybe he just got home from school, he didn't want to study, but he was kind of hanging out in the chat. So some of you Dog Nation people will be able to remember that. That was actually Jackson Cantwell in the chat. One other little nugget that we try to give you guys the real on Before the Hedges. He texted Kirby Smart before Jared Curtis' announcement. And he's like, Kirby, do you know what's going on? Do you know what's going to happen?
Oh, my gosh.
Kirby said, yes, I do. But according to my information, Kirby did not tell him what. He just said, yes, I know what's going to happen here.
I mean, honestly, that could play to Kirby's favor because then Jackson Cantwell knows, like, okay, this is a guy who can keep secrets.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of interesting stuff, guys. Let me make sure I don't bury the lead. The number one overall prospect in the class for both the 24/7 Sports Team Composite and the On3 Industry Ranking. We acknowledge them as the two kind of national aggregate formulaic algorithm leaders in ranking recruits because they blend all the recruits together like a gumbo from all the sites and come up with their own specialized ranking. Jackson Cantwell, I talked to him about all this. Feels like a priority. All the schools kind of feel the same way. He's got 4 hats bought for all 4 schools. His family doesn't have any merch from any of the schools, so that's going to be very interesting. I don't know if he's going to go to Hollister.com or not. Can't believe I'm saying this. Brandon's going to strike me down one day for doing this. But that's some good information. That's some good juice as well. He's also said that he doesn't care where he plays. Left tackle, right tackle, guard, doesn't matter. Just wants to get on the field. He said he would even be the dedicated third tight end and goal line packages. So those are very interesting because the national narrative about Cantwell going for the big check, little skewed because it sounds like those are a lot of very team-centric qualities there.
So as a quarterback, you got to find the people that are going to protect you, but you also have to find the targets that you're going to throw to. So the next two we can almost group together. It's the pass catchers and both tight ends. Caden Prother is more on the tight end wide receiver thing, but then you've also got 5-star tight end Mark Bowman. So it's like now you got to get Jackson Cantwell to protect you, but you need these guys as targets. I mean, even looking at these two 5-star tight ends, can Georgia afford that?
That's a great question because you look at if they can afford the tackle, if they can afford. I'm sorry, I'm just trying not to laugh. They can afford the quarterback, the tackle. What does it mean for the wide receiver? What does it mean for the wide receiver hybrid? What does it mean for the tight end? Mark Bowman. I wanted to make sure I pulled this up. His reaction to the Jared Curtis news was, "I think it's a big get, and it definitely helped them." That was Bowman on Curtis this week after the news. I mean, he is a special tight end, guys. That film right there is about as good as you're going to get for a high school tight end. He's actually doing it on a team that won the mythical national championship. So there's the Bowman piece. There's the dominoes. I almost want to think about one of those old school movies from the 90s when everybody's playing dominoes in the backyard. Jared Curtis, should he lead to Jackson Cantwell? And then everybody's going to be able to say this, and this is one of those Bulldog points of pride that I'd imagine I might get Kaylee to raise her eyebrows when I see this. Let's give some perspective to this choice. Should Curtis and Cantwell both be dogs? That's the number 1 and the number 2 players in the country. Kirby Smart, never done that before. Okay,
well, I'm going to say yes, and here's why. I've been looking at recruitment a lot different recently. Because, yeah, I mean, it takes anybody a minute to adjust to the new way of things. But I think that Georgia's strength is that they're able to recruit talent at the high school level. That's just what they've done well forever because your players are so much better when they develop through your program. Yes, transfer portal's quick fix, but any college would rather take somebody out of high school and develop them the way that they want to. But in this day and age, good players cost big money. And so Georgia's got to be able to adapt to that way of that because that's just how things are now. If you want to recruit the elite talent at the high school level, you're going to have to be able to spend the big bucks. Some people are against that because it's like, how do you spread out that money? But at this point in time, if it's players like Jared Curtis and Jackson Cantwell, you're going to be able to scrounge up some money from some people on the outside because you can't miss out on those 2 guys. Everything else you can make work. So I'm not mad at them spending the big dollars on big players because that's just how it is now.
Feels like an NFL mentality, Kaylee, because they're spending them on places they need. They're also spending the money on the positions that NFL general managers really value. Like, look at it. Georgia haven't signed a 5-star quarterback since Brock Vandegrift. But think about this. When is the last time you watched Georgia play and you're like, Georgia has the best quarterback in the country or the best quarterback in the conference or the All-American quarterback. Now, Stetson had his thing going. We all know that. He was brilliant in that second season. But what happens when Kirby Smart gets the most talented quarterback in the country? What happens with that defense? And what happens with a quarterback like that that can then open up the field, benefit the run game, and everything else like that? Kaylee, not only that, you got to talk about Cantwell here too. Georgia hasn't signed a 5-star or had gotten a commitment from a 5-star offensive tackle long time, since it was Broderick Jones, I believe. There's a technicality there. When Monroe Freeling signed with Georgia, he was rated as a 5-star by some of the services. But when he committed to Georgia, he was not a 5-star. If you look at it, I've said this before, I really feel like when Georgia wins national championships, just look at the numbers, look at the history, look at the records. The rosters say that whenever they won those national championships, they had 5-star offensive linemen on the offensive line. That's something these teams over the last couple seasons have not had.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the last position group we'll talk about, and that's the running backs. Got Savion Hyder, who's a 5-star, and 4-star Jay Lamar. So it looked like Savion Hyder was going to be an absolute lock for a Michigan or an Ohio State. But now, as you'll see later in our class breakdown, he's coming back up on the board. Now, Georgia's going to have to get at least 2 running backs in the class of 2026 because you only signed Bo Walker in this last one. But again, we're talking about big numbers for big players here. What were their responses to the Jared Curtis commitment?
I'm going to tell you what, those are 2 guys that really understand ball. And if you have the number 1 quarterback in the country, you're not going to see a lot of 8-man boxes at Georgia. Jay Lamar was pretty funny. He said, when I asked him about Jared Curtis to Georgia, he said it's going to be a good year for UGA. You can read into that whatever you want with Jay Lamar there, but I think there's late juice, and juice I wasn't expecting, Kaylee, with Savion Hyder. I think there have been times in this recruitment where Savion Hyder never told the world, but it kind of felt like Georgia was his leader. Now you start adding all these 5-stars and all these number 1s, and you're going to say in the comment section, I hope you check me on this, how in the world can Georgia add a Curtis, potentially a Cantwell, potentially a Prothrow, potentially a Bowman, and then go get the 5-star number 1 running back in the country? Sounds like times are different in Athens. That's what it sounds like, where Georgia's going to play the game, and you know what we've always wondered after a couple of years of NIL, where Georgia was getting discounts with some guy, some teams, some recruitments. What happens if the team that has the best NFL pedigree, pipeline, best success in this decade is also one of the most competitive bids in the market for all these players? What's going to happen is you're going to have potentially, I didn't even see this coming, guys, potentially still a class where you can get 4 or 5 stars in one cycle in the NIL era.
Well, certainly a quarterback like Curtis is a guy that people want to play with and play for. So clearly it's not just Jared Curtis, the individual, that makes an impact on this class, but everything else that's followed it since. And we're going to spend a lot of this summer talking about the people that are going to come play alongside of him in the 2026 class. Now we're going to move on to our class breakdown where we have another commit to talk about. Yeah, we'll go ahead and start with the defense. You've got the 3-star defensive lineman, Seven Cloud, as well as the safeties, Zach Fort and Keelan Jones. But where the changes come in are on the offensive side of the ball, because now Jared Curtis, the 5-star quarterback, goes back up on the board. Then, of course, you've got future targets, Vance Spafford, Brady Marchese, as well as the 4-star tight end Lincoln Keys. But don't think that we forgot that Georgia got another commitment last week. It's the 4-star interior offensive lineman, Graham Houston, who I told Jeff earlier at lunch could potentially have a domino effect of his own. Of course, Graham Houston's out of Buford. A lot of guys that come up in our just off the list are Buford guys as well. So could this be the first of quite a few? Yeah, Kaylee, I can't tell the audience how proud you were to add those names, quarterbacks, especially some juice on the offensive side. It looks like Kirby and company are bringing the smoke offensively in this class. And Houston, lots of things to say here. Number one, kind of felt like he was going to be a dog since last January. He just decided, what am I waiting for? Do I need to go waste everybody's time? No relation to Colton Houston, but he is another link in the Buford pipeline. 4-star offensive lineman, could actually play some tackle, especially right, but I think most projections have him as a guard.
Graham's really tough. He's really technical. I love the way he puts his hands on guys on film and he finishes them. He's very strong. He's very, very technical. He knows what he's doing. He's been coached up really well in terms of scheme, in terms of just leveling guys. This is a guy that will allow Georgia, I feel, Kaylee, to get really picky with the rest of their offensive line class. And who knows, Kaylee? We like to wonder, we like to speculate. What happens if there's another name on that class breakdown next week? Because our next Before the Hedges, there'll either be a 5-star offensive tackle on that list or there will not.
I know. I'm actually more curious not to see what it does for this slide, but the next one that we'll show you. I'm always interested to see how these numbers change every time Georgia adds a commit, even though it is really early in the cycle. Now you have 8 commits, and with the addition of Graham Houston and Jared Curtis, Georgia goes from having the 27th best class to now the 17th. With just 2 guys, they move up 10 spots. So it's like if you add a 5-star offensive tackle, how does that change things? So now they're number 17. They finally got a 5-star commit as well as a top 50 commit, 2 top 100 commits both on the offensive side, 2 top 150 and 3 top 200. Georgia still remains the state with the most commits. But the biggest thing is you look at that ranking, I think a lot of people were concerned about how is the University of Georgia sitting at number 27? Well, with just 2 guys, they move up 10 spots. So if Jackson Cantwell does commit to Georgia, I'm very curious to see how big of a jump that number is. So now we'll go ahead and go to our top targets. So Savion Hyder comes back onto the list after being off of it for quite some time. Like, what was the intel that you got that said, hey, maybe we were wrong about this?
Well, it was kind of like, don't discount Georgia or don't count out Georgia now, especially because there's always been a real sentimentality towards Georgia from Hyder and his circles. Very interesting. Guys, he's not going up to 5. He's not going up to 2 or 3. He's going to take his official visit to Georgia. I believe it's the 2nd weekend in June, and we're going to see what's happening. But I think there's some smoke there, Kaylee, and that's why we kind of brought him back from the ethers, so to speak. Not even off the list, but I mean, goodness, Kaylee, if the Dogs find a way to put all these pieces together, man, that's going to be Brandon Adams is going to get very cocky on his program every day if all these players come to Athens offensively and then they merge up with all those defensive prospects from the 2025 class.
So on the next page of top targets, I don't necessarily want you to pay attention to who's on there because there's not that many changes, but instead pay attention to who's no longer on the list. And that was quarterback Bo Bentley, who we had him sitting in that 6th spot. Now that Jared Curtis is a commit, Bo comes off top targets. And now we get a rearranged version of the top 5, which we'll show you here on the screen. So Tyler Atkinson remains at number 1, but now everybody moves up. Jackson Cantwell goes to 2. Caden Prothro makes a big jump. You've got Kamari Brooks at 4, Mark Bowman at 3, but there's a really good chance that we're going to have a new revised top 5 next week because Jackson Cantwell is either going to be on the class breakdown or we're not going to be talking about him at all.
Yeah, Kaylee, you're right on that. Hit that one on the head right there. And I'm going to tell you, on this program, Tyler Atkinson is the real deal, the absolute real deal. I think he's the best linebacker prospect in the state since Roquan Smith. Now, things are going to get really interesting with Tyler because you're going to watch Georgia and you're going to say, does Georgia feel like Zayden Walker, Chris Cole, Justin Williams, A.J. Carra? Do they feel like they got enough at linebacker where the spin there at linebacker won't be like it will be for these other maybe needy positions? And folks, I readily acknowledge there's a great argument about, you can say the same thing about Mark Bowman. I think one of those 2 guys, Atkinson or Bowman, will kind of be the product of some hard choices where Georgia looks at the room and they're like, well, got a lot of dudes there, got a lot of first-rounders. Do we really need another one compared to the other position? Tyler Atkinson stays number 1 simply because he allows Georgia, more than anyone else in this class, to be Georgia, to be that dominant defensive team with a first-round linebacker for another 2 or 3 seasons after, C.J. Allen moves on, Raylan Wilson moves on, Chris Cole moves on, and so forth. So right there, Tyler Atkinson is number 1, but I will acknowledge another element here. Jackson Cantwell is pretty close to where he's at right now.
All All right, so now we'll go ahead and move on to our just off the list. Got a few pages of it here. I have been seeing a lot of buzz on social media lately about Georgia being a contender for the 5-star athlete Derek Cooper. Where does he fit into this narrative?
Yeah, if we were doing dominoes, the next domino I would have given Cody would probably have been Cooper, because Cooper's always loved Georgia. And I think, again, it's going to be very interesting to see where Georgia prioritizes. And I'm going to say you can interchange the word prioritize with spend or package together certain positions, especially these big-time national recruits, because I think Miami is going to be heavy there. And if you think if Miami loses on Cantwell, they're going to have a lot of spend left over in this class as well. One update to bring you with Carson Baker. We wrote about this on DogNation.com over the weekend, has official visits set up with all of his top schools except Georgia. He was planning to make his Georgia official during the season. He realizes now that he is going to commit during the summer before the season. So he's trying to jockey to get Georgia an official visit slot, maybe as early as May 22nd. So that's coming really good right there, coming really soon right there. Nick Abrams is one of those linebackers. I really like the way he could potentially fit in this class. Georgia is in his Final Four.
All right, so we'll move on to our next page of just off the list. Again, on these lists that I keep seeing coming up, I think these are, for the most part, on three. Justice Fitzpatrick, who's the brother of Minka Fitzpatrick. It looks like Georgia is the crystal ball for him, too.
Yeah, Georgia's there because Kirby was coaching his brother when he was a freshman at Alabama, and his brother Minka's career really took off when they inserted him at the star position as a true freshman for a Natty title team. Some interesting names here. Kedrick Golston, that is a Georgia legacy. Spoke to him recently. He really he thinks it's amazing in Athens. He's going to take an official visit. We're going to watch that one. I want to call your attention to Kenneth Goodwin II. He's actually pretty tight with Darnell Washington. Used to play at the same high school in Desert Pines in Las Vegas. He is also the nephew of Georgia assistant running backs coach David Hill. I don't know if you've ever seen him. Sweat equity check on Sundays. He's got a really spiritual message on social media. He would be a good follow for some dog fans. But Kenneth told me unabashedly Georgia is his leader heading into his visit period as well. So something to watch there. Potential alternate linebackers to either go along with Tyler Atkinson or instead of Tyler Atkinson.
So moving on, this was initially the page that Graham Houston was on. He comes off because now he's a commit. So do you think that he's already in the 4-star safety Nasir McCoy's ear about coming to Georgia?
I think he is, but the thing about Nasir is I think, although for the longest time Georgia and Nasir has been a very snug relationship, I don't know if there's been, maybe from both parties, but I don't know if the feelings from both of those parties are as strong as they've had been or as strong as I expected them to be right now. Other schools, Ohio State is one of them, Ole Miss is one of them. It seems like other schools are letting Nasir know that he's their guy. He's also decided to go by NASCAR McCoy now on some of his social media because his nickname was always NASCAR, but you see him now with a lot of his posts and a lot of his social media pages. He's going by NASCAR right there, so very interesting. I will call attention to Malachi Lee. He's the guy that took his official visit to Georgia for G-Day. He welcomed Coach Searles' cross-country transcontinental flight to Honolulu to Hawaii for a spring visit. I really think there's something there with Georgia and Malachi Lee right now as well, Kaylee.
All right, and moving on to the next page of just off the list, we spent some time last week talking about Tamarian Watkins and what position that he would play. Now let's focus on Jared Smith, the 4-star interior offensive lineman. With Jordan Smith, Georgia's already got 2 safeties now committed to the class. So how many interior offensive linemen do you expect Georgia to sign in this 2026 class?
So that one's very interesting, Kaylee. And we talked about dominoes. Here's a domino for you. What happens to Georgia's offensive line class if Jackson Cantwell doesn't choose the Dogs? Because that gets very interesting with my internal projections there. Jared is an in-state lineman. Kaylee, we've said before, we've kind of lamented the fact that the state of Georgia is usually cup runneth over with prospects. It's a little thin, a little light in the britches for offensive linemen in this cycle for the 2026 class. I think there's a really strong fit there with Jared in Georgia. I think if Georgia presses, they're probably going to be the team that gets him compared to others.
So with that, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Before the Hedges, brought to you by Kroger. Don't forget to tune in next Tuesday at 3:45 for the Jackson Cantwell decision on whatever Dog Nation platform you watch. It'll be myself and Jeff Sentell, and then, of course, we'll be right back here next Wednesday at 7 o'clock for another episode of Before the Hedges.